What is up, Flutter devs? Today, we're going to attempt to fix a memory leak inside of the Flutter framework. We're going to try to solve this bug number 148,291. And this isn't just any bug fix or any video or any day in the life of the Flutter framework. This is the beginning of a series of bug fixes that I'm doing as a way of saying thank you to new GitHub sponsors. So let me real quick show you what I'm talking about. Over here on GitHub, github.com/sponsors/Matthew Carroll, that's my username, that's my actual name. I've opened up individual sponsorships to help me be able every month to do more work on Flutter education, on community stuff in general. And what I've said is that for every 10 people who become a monthly sponsor at $20 or more, I will find and fix a bug in the Flutter framework. I also said I will record myself doing it and publish that video so that you can learn how to fix bugs in Flutter and how to contribute. So that's what we're doing today. Because we've hit more than 10 monthly sponsors, I'm now going to try to fix this bug. I'm going to record myself doing it, going to publish the video, and then once we get to 20 monthly subscribers, I'll do this again, and I'll keep doing it for every 10 people who sign up to support me monthly. And then, of course, beyond just fixing bugs, that monthly support, it helps make it possible for me to spend time writing educational guides, putting out blog posts, hosting shows like Flutter Spaces over on X/Twitter, and of course, yes, fixing bugs in the Flutter framework, implementing features in the Flutter framework, writing design docs for refactors and new features in the Flutter framework. It also creates an opportunity for me to go work on packages, open source packages and features in open source packages, bug fixes in open source packages that maybe there isn't any corporate funding to work on. So this is the beginning of an effort to try to build a financial foundation for me to spend as much of my time every month creating things for you in the Flutter community as possible. And that's what we're starting with today. Today is the first such example. So let us now go back to this bug. My hope is that this bug isn't too involved. My hope is we can reproduce the issue pretty easily. My hope is that we can find a reasonable fix to it. And my hope is that we can write some kind of reasonable test, all of this without too much effort. I'd like to kind of ease back into working on the Flutter framework and fixing bugs, and I'm hoping this bug isn't too bad. But let's quickly take a look at what this bug is talking about. Then let's see the problem in reality, and then let's figure out what we're going to do about it. This person was nice enough to provide a fairly clear path to reproduction, including a code sample here. So this code here, this is all part of the reproduction. There's only a couple details in this code that we need to understand. What this code is doing is it's displaying a Flutter app. The app begins on page 1. Then you can go to page 2. On page 2, there's a text field. The text field receives focus. Then you can go back to page 1. And what this person is saying is that, well, when you go to page 2 and then you go back to page 1, there's this memory leak where part of page 2 gets stuck in memory because of this undo redo manager stuff. So this right here, this is page 1. It says home. There's this floating action button where it tells the navigator to go to the next page, which is called the edit page. Okay, well, here's the edit page. There's almost nothing to it. It essentially just has a text field. That text field receives focus. And then when you go back, that's when the issue happens. The person who filed this ticket also said, hey, here's what happens in Observatory. Observatory is a tool that I haven't used very much at all. We're going to kind of stumble our way through it. But what we see here in this screenshot is that the person who filed this issue is pointing out that there is this element which is retained even when it shouldn't exist anymore. So we're going to try to verify that, figure out why it's happening, and then see if we can fix it. This person was also nice enough to lead us to some code that's going to be relevant when it comes time for us to fix this problem. But first steps first, let's reproduce it. Now, for those of you who didn't join me in my videos with Taha, where we did a little bit of work in Flutter, I have 2 projects open right now. In the top left, this is the actual Flutter framework. Okay, this is the Flutter package in the Flutter repo. And you can see I've already opened up some undo manager stuff for us to make it easier to jump in and see the code that's relevant. I also have this other project open, which you'll see up here is called Flutter Sample. This is an app that exists solely for me to reproduce issues with the version of Flutter that's under development. It's a throwaway project. Every time I come in here, I kind of tear out whatever's here and I replace it with what I need. It's like a scratch pad. It's a scratch pad to verify what's going on in the Flutter framework that I'm working on. Now, in this sample project, I've already copied over the reproduction code that I just showed you in the issue ticket. And I made a few adjustments just because the reproduction code in the issue ticket, it was like shoving stuff into app bars. And I'm like, that's it. It was weird. I just put stuff at the center of the screen. So let me show you right now what this looks like. So we'll say Flutter dev run device Mac OS. Technically, the undo redo signal, I think, might come only from iOS, but we don't actually care about the undo redo signal. We just care about what happens to the things that are listening to that signal. So here we have the reproduction code. Again, page 1, super simple, says home, go to next page. If we go to next page, oh, I realize I commented something out earlier that needs to come back. So actually, that's weird. So that text field should have been visible. I'm seeing some weird stuff today in terms of things being out of date. I don't know if this is problems with the master branch right now or what. But we should have seen a text field right there. So let me run the same app again. Let's see if it picks up the differences this time. Okay, page 1. Nope. Let me do a hot restart then and see if it picks it up. I don't know what the issue is here. Okay. Hot restart again. Here we are on page 1. It says home. Go to next page. I should actually probably change that name too, just to be absolutely clear. This is edit page. Hot restart again. Here we are on home page. We go to next page. Now we're on the edit page. Notice that this text field has this blinking caret right over here. That's because this text field says, I want to receive focus as soon as I'm visible. So the moment this page appears, it has focus. The person who reported this bug didn't have to use autofocus. They could have manually focused. But the point is, we don't care about the process of focusing. We just care that it receives focus. I guess let me also make sure we all understand what focus means. Focus is a concept that defines where all text input goes. Whether you're typing on a physical keyboard or whether you're typing on a software keyboard on your phone, all that text input is directed to the widget that, quote, has focus. Generally speaking, only one widget at a time in your entire app can have focus, so there's only one place for all of that keyboard input to go. But undo redo is kind of related to text input. Most of the time, that's what it's about. You type some text and you want to undo what you typed, right? It's not exclusively text, but it's highly related to it. So undo redo typically gets piped to whatever has focus. This text field requests focus so that the undo redo signal gets connected to the text field, because the memory leak is in the undo redo behavior. So what this person is saying in their issue ticket, they're saying, look, we start on the home page, we go to the edit page, that creates this connection to the undo redo manager. But then we go back, the edit page should be totally gone from memory, but it's not gone from memory because that undo redo system is still holding on to that text field that's no longer in existence, or at least it shouldn't be. That's the memory leak. Our first job, if we're going to solve this bug, is to prove that what the person said in the ticket is true. Let me kill this app and let me run it with Observatory. I'm going to say Flutter run, and I'm going to say serve Observatory. And this is just me following the instructions in the ticket. Again, I don't even know the last time that I used Observatory. I'm very unfamiliar with it. I'm just kind of stumbling my way through it. So let's see what happens. All right, the app is back, and we should be given a URL here. Let me try to make this taller if I can. Wow, this is annoying. There's like 1 pixel where I can drag this thing. All right. Dart VM service is available here. I'm going to copy that URL. Let's go to the browser. Here is Observatory. And when I looked a little bit at this earlier, to get to the same place as the person who wrote the issue, this is what I found. So in Observatory, this thing is like monitoring the app. There's this one isolate that holds our entire Flutter UI system. We're going to tap on that. And then in here, again, a bunch of information being monitored, but I found that what we want to tap on is this root library right here, main.dart. We know what main.dart is, right? That's our one Dart file. So we'll go into that. And then in here, I think inbound references is what we want. And you see this edit page element right here. This is what the person who wrote the ticket said is the problem. He said this is where the memory leak happens. So we'll tap on that. Now let me show you something. Right now, there's no size to this. Why is there no size? Because the edit page doesn't exist yet. We haven't navigated to it. So watch this. Go to next page. Oh, wow. It's like there's something really messed up here today with the caching. Let me do a hot restart again. This is I don't know what the problem is here. Let me refresh this. Okay, it's complaining over here, and that's probably because the thing we were looking at no longer exists because I did a hot restart. Let me come back here to the main isolate. We'll go to isolate, main.dart, inbound references, edit page element, retain size is 0. Go to next page. Okay, now here's the edit page with the text field. Let's refresh the retained size. Actually, I guess we have to refresh the whole thing. Refresh the retained size. 288 bytes. So now this thing exists. It has a size. Now we're going to go back to the previous page. We're going to say go back. Now let's refresh this again. Refresh it again. It's still 288 bytes. It's supposed to be gone. It's supposed to be completely out of memory, but here's 288 bytes. The question then might be, though, how do we know that the text field is really the problem here? How do we know this isn't a deeper issue with Navigator or something like that? And that's a good question that I'm asking myself rhetorically. Let's come back here to our code and see, here's the text field. Let's comment out the text field, get rid of it. Let's do a hot restart. Back here in Observatory, we'll go to the isolate. We will go to inbound. Whoops, I guess we have to refresh again. Always got to keep refreshing this. Main isolate, main.dart, inbound references, edit page element. It's 0, but we expect it to be 0 because we haven't navigated there yet. Now let's navigate to that page. You'll see no more text field. I removed the text field. Let's refresh. 288 bytes. The page is there, right? Now let's navigate back. Now we're back to the home page. Refresh. Now it's 0 bytes. That's what we expected in the first place. You go to a page, it exists. You leave a page, it doesn't exist. That's what we just proved. And the only difference was the text field. That said, it's still possible that the text field, that something else in the text field causes the memory leak. But I think at this point, we can trust the person who wrote the ticket that the memory leak has to do with registering for undo, redo. Okay, so we want to try to find that problem and fix it. Let's bring the text field back. Let's do a hot restart. Let's bring Observatory back to the main isolate just so it's fresh so we can try some stuff out. And actually, probably we're going to have to kill the app because we're going to make changes to the Flutter framework. So let me actually go ahead and kill the app, kill Observatory, and let's look at the Flutter framework. I told you that this person was nice enough to point us to some relevant code. This person said, undo history line 200. Undo history line 200. There's this method called handle focus. It's probably useful to know what class we're looking at right now, right? What is this thing that we're inspecting? If we scroll up, we see this, undo history state. It's a state object, which means it must be tied to a widget. We keep scrolling up. Sure enough, there's an undo history widget, and it takes a child. So I'm noticing these details, and so now my assumption is that undo history is meant as a widget that you can use to wrap any other content when you want to respond to undo redo signals from the platform. That's what this widget is meant to do. And inside of this widget, part of that responsibility is listening for changes to focus. And so handle focus, let's see, where's that called from? Because I think these methods are ordered in like the worst way possible. We have to scroll way down below the code to find it. In init state, it calls handle focus, but also there's this focus node where every time focus changes, we call handle focus again. So you can think of handle focus as saying, okay, something has changed in focus. Do I, as an undo redo widget, do I have to change something inside of myself? And the person who filed this ticket said, yeah, this method is wrong. This method isn't doing enough. That there's two conditions that are possible, right? Either we have focus in this widget or we don't have focus in this widget. This widget is focused or it's not focused. Well, if it's not focused, this method just returns, does nothing. Therefore, if it is focused, this widget makes itself the global responder to undo redo and then updates itself. And we don't really care what update state does, at least not for now. This right here is the source of the issue. Notice that this widget makes itself the undo manager client, but doesn't undo that, doesn't remove itself. You see, we have an asymmetry. We create a reference, but we never remove the reference. Okay? And in fact, over here, every reference to undo manager is highlighted over here on the right. There's literally only 2 references in this entire widget, and there's only one place where the client is set, and it's right here. We're actually missing 2 things here, if you think about it. Because sure, when we lose focus, we should remove ourselves as the client. That's true. That's one change we're going to need to make. But where's the other place that we're screwing up? The other place is right here. This widget can be disposed and it's still registered as the global undo redo client. Now, again, yes, that's a memory leak, but I can imagine situations where that's worse than a memory leak. Because if we're still registered as the client, undo redo is calling methods on us after we've been disposed. This state object isn't even valid anymore after dispose is called. And yet we are still receiving undo redo signals. So let's fix this. Now let's see. So one question we should always ask before we jump in and fix something is, do we want to write our tests before we fix it or after we fix it? Let's try to write tests before we fix it. That's the ideal. It's not always the easiest. Sometimes it's not worth it, but let's try to do that, okay? And the question is now, where do we want to locate these tests? Supposedly every change to Flutter requires tests, and therefore, in theory, there should already be tests that create this widget. So I'm going to come up to the undo history widget. I'm going to say find uses. And we see, this is going to be kind of small for you, but there is an undo history test file that uses it. Let's jump right in. Let's open that up. All right. ungroup, undo history. Okay. There are some inline methods here. A quick aside. As we go through these bug fixes, there are going to be so many things that the Flutter organization does that I completely disagree with. And this is one of them. So let me explain to you what the issue with what we're looking at right here so that maybe you can do a better job when you contribute to the Flutter framework. In this case, the Flutter team is saying, we want to test this undo redo widget. We want to make sure it actually undoes things and redoes things. So we're going to create these inline methods inside of our test file that make it easy to simulate, to pretend that the operating system is sending undo redo signals. That is very convenient for the tests. That's not the problem. I'm not against easy simulation behavior. In fact, I created a package at the Flutter Bounty Hunters called Flutter Test Robots. And that's a package that has accumulated a whole bunch of tools that make it really easy to simulate user behavior. So if you need that in your tests, go see if that package helps you out. Flutter Test Robots. My issue is not with the simulated behavior. Look at this and tell me why this is a bad decision on behalf of the Flutter community. The answer is that the Flutter team is not the only group of people that need to write tests against Flutter. Every single Flutter package, every single Flutter app should be writing tests. Those tests need to exercise things in Flutter, and those tests might want to have undo and redo. So in the best case scenario, this approach of writing simulated capabilities into a test file at best requires 100,000 different teams to copy and repeat this same code. Why? Because the person who wrote this wasn't thinking about or didn't care about or didn't know how to make these public APIs. But they should be. Now, they can be public APIs in a test package or something. I have no opinion about that. But if the Flutter team wants to do something, it's very reasonable to think that people who aren't on the Flutter team will want to do the same thing. So defining tools privately just creates problems for everybody else. And in fact, it creates blind spots for the Flutter team because the Flutter team, think about, okay, this is just 3 methods, but just imagine how many of these there are. Imagine how many private tools exist in all of these test directories to do things easily inside of Flutter that nobody outside of Flutter gets to use because they're private. They're not accessible. This is a bad policy. This is a behavior that repeats over and over that they shouldn't engage in. It makes things harder for everybody else. Okay, that rant aside, we're going to have many rants in these bug fixes. It's like half bug fix, half rant. So these are methods that simulate user behavior for the purpose of these tests. Then we have tests. Allows undo and redo to be called programmatically from the controller. We're focused, I think, on the widget, so that's probably not relevant to us. Scroll on down here. Allows undo and redo to be called using the keyboard. Let's see. So we have a controller here. So here's the widget. It still has a controller. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, this is, they're just poking at various things here. Duplicate changes do not affect the undo history. So these are all interaction based. These are like, these set up a widget that can receive undo signals, and then they start sending the undo signals. In terms, when I think about the order of tests, I typically like to see the bare bones setup and tear down first. Like if your widget doesn't initialize correctly, and if it doesn't dispose correctly, then all the stuff, all the intermediate stuff where you're tapping on stuff or typing stuff, it almost doesn't matter because you haven't even shown that it gets created and disposed correctly. So I tend to like to see those tests first. I don't know what the Flutter team is going to say about that, but let's do that here. Let's live that approach. So let's create a test widgets. We will say undo history widget registers as global undo redo client. And this is, I'm just kind of framing stuff out here. I think the other tests implicitly verify this, but if we're going to verify deregistration, it might not hurt to verify registration. And then that widget deregisters as global undo redo client when it loses focus. That's one situation that we identified, right? And then undo history widget deregisters as global undo redo client when disposed. All right. How do we implement those three tests? Let's see what we can borrow from the existing tests. First, here's a widget tree. I don't see any obvious reason to change it. Let's start with that. Let's see, undo history, value controller trigger. So child, we don't really care much about. We just need the undo history to receive focus. Where's this thing coming from? Oh. This is also a really dangerous thing to do, guys, to have global variables like this in tests. It's so easy to change this value in one test and then you use it in another test. I don't know why they think that's a good idea. So what we're going to do is create our own focus node. So we can copy their assignment here, but we're going to create our own. Okay. I don't know that we need a controller. Let's see, what's the value? Why is that the value? Let's jump into value. The value to track over time. I guess it's typed. So I guess undo history has some type of thing. Okay, another rant. Who is this helping? Right? What is this telling me? It's called value. Obviously, it holds a value. And obviously, it holds a value. Like this, God. You're better off writing nothing at all. At least then somebody realizes that there's a missing Dart doc. But when you write something like this, no one ever comes in to write something better because there's already something here. And what's here is totally useless. So now I'm going to have to actually investigate what this thing does. Called when an undo or redo causes a state change if the state would still be before. Okay, changes to the value while this method is running will not be recorded. Okay, so by value, see there's now an intermingling of terminology. There's this word state, and it seems that state is value and value is state. Okay, that's, again, nobody seemed to bother to write that down, but that seems to be the case. Update next value. So in theory, I assume when undo and redo are run, it produces this next value. So it comes in here. If it's null, I actually don't know that that's the correct thing to do. Like, why can't it be null? What if you want your state value to be null? Although I guess it thinks that the value was already set to the next value. Okay, so maybe this isn't exactly the right place. Let me come up here. I'm going to say value, find usages. Come on. All right, and I want to know let's see. Add listener, remove listener, add listener, remove listener, equals, equals. I don't see where this thing is actually being updated. I don't know. Again, terrible Dart doc, poor name. I don't know what this thing actually is doing. I can't seem to find a place where its value is updated. I assumed that when the undo redo signal came in to this, is there some weird, no, undo stack modifier. Handle platform undo. Okay. Undo. What are we doing up here? Then we call update. Then we're back here. I'm sorry, but I don't know where that condition is happening. So here's the undo method. Somebody presses Command Z and the OS says, okay, Flutter app, undo something. And this widget is registered for the undo. It looks at the current, it looks at the stack. The stack is the history, the undo history. If it's null, apparently we do nothing. Again, I'm not entirely convinced that's appropriate in general because null values can be legitimate histories, I think, in undo redo. But okay, if it's null, you return. Then there's this timer, which I'm guessing is here to prevent rapid undo redo. Timer probably doesn't matter a whole lot. These three things are what matter. So as we undo something, we call this update method. That's clearly one thing that happens, and then update state. Let's see what update state is doing. Okay, it gets a controller, or it takes the controller and it sets the value on the controller. That's a different value. Oh, God. This drives me up a wall. This widget, which is called undo redo history. It's not undo redo iOS history. It's undo redo history. It doesn't do anything if it's not on iOS. It explicitly bails. Ugh. Okay, whatever. So we're on iOS. We've undone something. And then if we are, in fact, the global undo redo client, we set this undo state thing. It is still unclear what this value is. So, unfortunately, because it has been made overly difficult to know what that value is, I guess let me try one more thing, which is to actually read the Dart docs. Provides undo redo capabilities for a value notifier. Undo redo capabilities for a value notifier. Listens to value and saves relevant values for undoing, redoing. The cadence at which values are saved is a best approximation of the native behaviors of a number of hardware keyboard on Flutter's desktop platforms. Well, wait a second. We just saw that this widget literally only works on iOS. What do the desktop platforms have to do with this? There are subtle differences between each of the platforms. I mean, we just saw a method that doesn't run if it's not on iOS. Listens to keyboard undo redo shortcuts and calls on triggered. Okay, so maybe it's got multiple pathways built into this widget, but those pathways probably shouldn't exist in this widget. They should exist, like all pathways should lead into the undo redo manager. That's why it's called a manager, because it manages all the ways that undo redo would happen. If it's only half responsible, then it's not a manager. It's something else. I don't know what. It's a platform channel or something. All right. Well, like I said, this is going to be like half bug fix, half rant. It's still not entirely clear. I mean, I'm getting some sense as to what this value is. It's still not entirely clear. So I'm going to repeat what other tests have already done because I don't want to get bogged down any further with this. If we find out that the value matters to us, we'll care more about it. The controller, I hope we don't need that. Do we need that? No, we don't need that. Okay. And on triggered, I don't think we care about that either. So I'm just going to stub it out to make it, well, can I delete it? No. So it's required. It has to be there. But we don't care about it. So we'll stub it out. Focus node, we do care about, I think, because we need to give this thing focus. Okay. Initially the focus node doesn't have focus. Now, why is this complaining? Why would I need the type annotation? Is this really a lint policy in the Flutter framework? That's crazy. Wow. Okay. So I just found out that even though the Dart team shipped null safety, and one of the values of null safety is the ability to imply types, the ability, even though one of the benefits of that language change is to be able to do this, where value knows it's a value notifier. Flutter has added a linter that forces you to repeat the type. That seems kind of crazy to me. That's like thousands of extra tokens throughout the code base just because. And maybe there's some historical context there, but anyway, when we first pump, there's no focus. Initially, the undo history doesn't have focus. Therefore, it should not be the global undo redo client. Ensure that's the case. So we will say expect undo redo. Uh-oh, why can't I access that? Is that not the name of the thing? Or is it just undo manager? Undo, okay. Undo manager. Oh, and we can't access the client. We can set it. Actually, no, maybe we can. So yes, we can. That's a property, not a setter. So we expect that it is null, right? That's what that, when we first pump, nothing has focus. I get, well, actually, that maybe that's not true. It's possible Material app has focus, but I don't know. Let's run this test and find out. That's the great thing about tests. You can just run them. So Flutter dev test. Where are we here? We are test widgets undo history. And we just want to run this one test. We're going to say plain name equals undo history widget registers as global. Let's run that test. And it passed, which means, yes, right here it's null. Now we're going to give focus to the undo history widget. How do we do that? We take the focus node and we say request focus. But remember, we're in a test. We are responsible for moving time forward. If we're going to request focus, we need an extra frame to compute that in the widget tree. So we're going to say await tester pump. We're going to pump one frame. And then we'll copy this expectation and we'll say, now that the undo history widget has focus, it should have registered itself as the global undo redo client. Now here, this gets a little more interesting because what do we expect it to be? We expect it to be the state object, which means we need a key. Undo history global key. We need to be able to access that state inside the widget. So final, gonna have to say the type because of the linter. Global key, undo history, global key. All right, then down here, we're gonna say final undo history state equals undo history global key current state. And then we expect that the state object is the client. Wow, and we have to type, this is crazy. This is a state optional, okay. All right, now let's run that test. Failed, let's see what's going on. And it says it's null still. Okay. So it's possible that I've misunderstood the series of events, but it's also possible that for some reason it requires multiple frames to be pumped. Now you want to stay away from pump and settle, but I'm going to use it here to see if this is the source of the issue first. Nope, still null. Okay, so let's see what I didn't understand about this series of events. Let's go back to undo history. This is the widget. And there's handle focus. This is the line that I'm expecting to be called. Let's do something real obvious. Let's say we're running handle focus. And let's ask if we have focus. Let's run the test. Handle focus false. That means that this method is not running in response to us requesting focus. Focus node, focus node, focus node. So this, calling request focus on this node, I believe should have done the job here. Let's see. Oh, and its state is down below because of this bad, well, we're in its state, but let's see, what was I looking for? So we add the listeners here. Let's check in our actual test after we literally request focus. Does our node have focus now? Focus node has focus. Let's find out. No, it doesn't have focus. So I must be forgetting something in how to request focus. Let me see if that is made clear anywhere else. Let me see. Focus node dot. Okay, well, here you can see it's requesting focus. Is there anything different here? They pass the focus node. Like, why do they put a focus widget in here? Why is this needed? I'm wondering if the focus node does some extra stuff. So the focus widget. The focus node, that is the thing that interacts with focus. That is the root of it. But the focus node, or focus widget, makes some decisions about when to add and remove focus and kind of manages some of the focus behavior. You could do it manually yourself, but this widget, if what you need is what's in this widget, then you use the focus widget. I'm wondering though if the focus widget is doing something that's relevant for requesting focus that I'm not doing without it. Let's add a focus widget and find out. Now let's run the test. Okay, now the test passes. There's something in that focus widget that's needed for this request focus to work its way into the overall widget tree. I don't know why. I don't remember what that is, but so be it. So we've solved that. Now let's get the print statements out of here. It still says I've changed something in here, but I don't know what. I guess we'll see in the change log. Okay, so that's actually one test done. Initially, we're not registered. Then we request focus. Then we are registered. Then there's the next test, which I think we can make it fail because I think there actually will be a bug here. Our second test says deregisters when it loses focus. So first we make sure that we have focus, and we make sure that when we have focus, we're registered as the client. Ensure that undo history is the global undo redo client. Remove focus from undo history widget. Now we're going to say focus node. What's the method here? We want unfocus. We're saying get rid of our focus. We don't want it. And then we will pump a frame. And now we want to ensure the undo history widget is no longer the global client. We expect this to be null, in fact. Right? We register when we get focus, we unregister when we lose focus. Let's run this test. And what is the shortest thing that I can write for us to run this test? When it loses focus. And it failed. And where did it fail? It failed right here because the actual value is the state that lost focus. That's bug number one. We now have a failing test, but let's continue to bug number two. Bug number two, which was not mentioned in the ticket, but which I believe I have identified simply by reading the code, is that when we dispose, we're still going to be the global handler, the global undo redo handler. Now, how are we going to test that? Okay, well, we'll start the same way. We'll request focus. We verify that we have the focus. This is where we're going to change stuff. When does dispose run? Dispose runs when the widget is no longer in the tree. So we're going to pump a whole other frame, and we're just going to put a sized box in here. This is like in your Flutter app, if you called set state and you replaced the home widget. You replaced what you had with this sized box. So this should run dispose on our undo redo history state. So we will cause the undo history widget to dispose its state. Ensure that the disposed undo history state is not still the global undo redo history client. We want to expect that undo manager.client is null. Now let's run this test, and let me look at the name again. Client when disposed. Test failed. Where did it fail? Failed right here. So even after we've disposed, and look at this right here. Defunct, not mounted. A defunct, not mounted, i.e. disposed state, is still registered as the global handler for all undo and redo behaviors. That's a bug. All right. We have 2 failing tests. In fact, let's run the whole suite. Let's run all of them. There should be 2 failures in here. Let's see. All right, 30 passed, 2 failed. Now let's go fix it. Undo history. What's the obvious answer here? When focus changes, if we do not have focus, then if undo manager.client is us, undo manager client needs to become null. Deregister. Okay, with that if statement, let's run the whole test suite again. Now 31 pass and 1 fail. Let's go to dispose. Dispose. If undo manager.client equals us, then undo manager.client equals null. You might wonder, why is this if statement here? This if statement is here because it's possible that somebody else is listening to undo redo, not us. Well, we don't want to null them out. We don't want to deregister somebody else. We only want to deregister us. So if we are still registered, we are going to deregister. Now let's run the test suite again. All 32 tests pass. We probably just fixed a memory leak, but remember that we began with reproducing the memory leak. We now need to reproduce a not memory leak. In our sample app, we have the text field that we originally used. Let's go ahead and once again run with Observatory. And this should, maybe I needed to do a pub get, I'm not sure. I think this should be running against all the changes that we just made. All right, so here's our app. Let me copy the Observatory URL. Okay. Now let's go to the main isolate, main.dart, inbound references, edit page element, 0 bytes. Next page. It did it again. There is a serious caching problem right now with the master channel, as far as I can tell. Hot restart. So we get the actual Dart code we're supposed to have. Back to the Observatory. Main. Inbound references. No, okay, got to refresh the whole thing. Refresh. Okay. By the way, the UX for this could be so much better. I don't know what half of this stuff is that I'm looking at. Okay, 0 bytes. Go to next page. A page with a text field. Refresh. 288 bytes. Go back to the first page. Refresh. 0 bytes. And I just now realized that my camera has frozen. I have no idea how long that's been the case. Let me stop the recording and start again. And I'm sorry that this video missed all of my wonderful mannerisms for however long. I'll be right back. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. That's the problem when the recording software is over on this screen that's like in the corner of my eye. If something goes wrong, I have no idea. So apologies that the first bug fix video missed my beautiful face for so long. I guess my face was there. I was just still. It just wasn't moving. You didn't get to see my anger with some of these decisions that are being made. But okay, what we just proved is that we solved the memory leak. The retained size is 0. Now we have to try to contribute this. So let's go see what all did we actually end up changing here in the framework. Let's do a git diff. Okay, that change. Well, actually, yeah, I guess that's probably, I hope the auto formatter didn't run. You don't want the auto formatter to run because the auto formatter changes all sorts of things the team won't accept. But let's see. So that removed a space. Then we add an if statement that's legitimate, an if statement that's legitimate. Okay, and this is where the auto formatter came in. Damn it. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's see if they allow the auto formatter changes here. I just don't really want to go back and redo that. So we'll see what they say. But then in the test suite, here's the test that one of the tests that we wrote, another test that we wrote, another test that we wrote. And darn it, all right, let me see what I got to do to turn off this auto format. All right, if I'm going to undo some of it, I might as well undo all of it. Let's go to the test. Let's cut our test out of here and reset. So here's one test. Whoops, what's going on? One test, see, test number 1. Test 2. Test 3. We're going to cut that out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check out the original. So under status, we say git checkout test. That's going to kill all of my changes. Fine. And then I'm going to paste the test right back in there. Then I'm going to come up here. Essentially all we did was add this if statement to 2 different places. So I'm going to reset the source code. Now it's gone, but now I'm going to add it right there. And I'm going to add it right there. And then I'm going to run the test suite again to make sure we have 32 tests that pass. And we do, so we're back. A git diff, let me make sure we're only making the tactical changes that we wanted to. I'm so far only seeing our changes. Okay. Now, what are we on? Master. Git checkout branch. What issue is this? This is issue 148291. 148291. Fix memory leak in undo history widget. Then we're going to add lib. We're going to add test. Are those staged? Yes, they are. Git commit m fix memory leak in undo history widget because it never deregistered itself as global undo manager client. Resolves number 148291. Commit git push origin 148. You'll probably have to push to your own fork. I think I have special write privileges here because I used to be on the team. We will compare. Gonna move that description back up there. Okay, and let's see, what is it telling us to do here? Replace this paragraph with a description. Anything in Flutter? Okay. The undo history widget works by making itself the global client in undo manager, well, making it the global undo manager.client. The undo history widget correctly registers itself as that client but never deregisters itself. That led to two problems. When undo history loses focus, it's still the recipient of undo, redo signals. When undo history is disposed, its disposed state object still receives undo, redo signals. This PR deregisters the undo history widget in both of the above scenarios. And then we have to just put a bunch of check marks in here. Okay. Now we will create that pull request. I am going to tag Taha. This isn't really his area, but maybe he'll help me get it approved. I'm also going to tag Justin, who works in this area. Justin is also usually a decent person to help something get approved. Despite the fact that it was a tactical change, obvious bugs, obvious solution, there's already something has failed. So there's always problems that show up down here. So let's open up the details on this. What is it complaining about? So this has nothing to do with me or us. Let's try get fetch origin master to master. Let's grab the latest from master. Now let's rebase against master. Really? Master hasn't changed? Git log 1 master. Roll Flutter. Git log 2. Roll Flutter. Okay. So I'm not so this says we're out of date with master, but I don't think that we are. Okay. Let's see what else happens here. I know I'm not going to have you wait for all this. These tests take forever to run. I just want you to notice that look at all these things. All of these have to run and they all have to pass. And by the way, master is this branch that everybody in the organization is changing constantly. So these can fail for reasons that have nothing to do with you. But you can't merge if they're red. They all have to be green. Therefore, one thing I recommend is whenever you're working on Flutter, make the fewest possible changes to actually accomplish your goal. Make those changes in as narrow of a location as possible. If you can do it in one method, great. One class, great. One file, great. Keep it small, keep it narrow, keep it tactical, because you're gonna have to survive this gauntlet of CI tests. And these things will be broken. You'll have to wait for other people to fix it because you weren't the one who broke it. They were the one who broke it. And then when they fix it, you've got to rebase or at least do a merge commit with the latest from master. And when you do that merge commit, if you've got a lot of changes floating around, you might have a lot of conflicts and you just get stuck in this never-ending churn. On the one hand, we could say, hey, the Flutter organization policies should make that easier or better, and that's probably true, but you can only control what you can control. And in the case of your contributions, that is how small is each change, how focused, how narrow. So with that, we are going to consider this bug fixed. I will follow up with this PR. If something interesting happens in the PR, I'll do another recording and add it to the end of what you're watching right now. But if you don't see anything more from me, it's because we got this approved, we got it merged in, and this bug is officially fixed. And so I want to note something here for all of my GitHub sponsors and for those of you who might become a GitHub sponsor. This was a real bug. This was a real memory leak. and it was marked P3. When you see P3 on a Flutter issue ticket, you should just replace that in your brain with, we're never going to do it. That's, in effect, that's what it means. A P0 will get done immediately. A P1 will get done soon. A P2 probably will eventually get done. And a P3, if the Flutter team, like, if you want something and the Flutter team doesn't want to do it, rather than like tell you they're not going to do it, they might just drop it into the P3 bucket. The P3 bucket is where tickets go to die. And so because we reached 10 sponsors on GitHub, 10 monthly sponsors, this P3 bug, which was a real bug, it was a real memory leak, we proved it. This P3 bug got fixed. It would likely never have been fixed, but for the fact that these people sponsored me on GitHub. And so that offer goes out to all of you. For every 10 of you that become monthly sponsors, I will do this again. I will find another bug. I will fix it. You will watch me fix it. I will publish a video fixing it. So I hope that you will consider becoming a monthly sponsor to me on GitHub, and we can fix a whole lot of bugs together that the Flutter team isn't even thinking about. So with that, I'm going to babysit this PR. I appreciate you watching this. I hope you learned something about how to contribute to Flutter. Let's keep this momentum going, whether you're sponsoring me, whether you do it yourself. Let's keep fixing Flutter, extending Flutter, and building an all-around better Flutter community. I'll see you in the next one.